Hi students, hope all of you are doing fine. So we are back with one more paper discussion. So 25th July, what we have conducted. So this is a first shift paper actually. So we'll try to discuss this question paper, right? So one by one. So here we go. Start discussing. All right. So start with the first question. A body of mass 2 kg and linear velocity 4 meter per second collides elastically head on with another body which is at rest. After collision, the body of mass 2 kg starts moving with velocity 1 meter per second. Then what will be the velocity of the center of mass of the system? They are asking the velocity of the center of mass of the system. So initially there is a 2 kg which is moving with a velocity of 4 meter per second. It is colliding with another which is at rest. They did not give the mass of this, right? But after collision, the 2 kg block starts moving with 1 meter per second, then the other one, we don't know, just let us say it is moving with some v, the other one, right? And since it is elastic collision, we know very well that the separation speed which is equal to the approach speed, right? So here approach speed is 4 and separation speed you can say v minus 1, separation speed v minus 1 which is equal to approach speed, that is 4. So v is equal to 5, correct? So this value you are going to get as 5 meter per second. Then they are asking what is the velocity of the center of mass of the system. If you want to find the velocity of the center of mass of the system, you know the formula m1v1 plus m2v2 by m1 plus m2. Before collision or after collision, whatever is the case, center of mass of the system, velocity will remain the same. Before collision, whatever the velocity the center of mass is having, same velocity after collision also it is going to have, correct? So for that you have to get the value of m also. So for that we are using conservation of momentum, linear momentum. Initial linear momentum, anyway this is at rest, its velocity is 0. So what is the initial linear momentum? 8 mv of this. And final linear momentum, mv plus mv, this mv plus this mv. So 2 plus mass we don't know, but velocity is 5. So 5m, so you can get the mass of that which is equal to 6 by 5 kgs. Alright. Now after getting this mass, you can get nicely the velocity of center of mass. Either you can use the formula m1v1 plus m2v2 by m1 plus m2 before collision or after collision, because both the cases velocity of center of mass remains the same. So I am using here m1v1 plus m2v2 anyway 0 by m1 plus m2, so 2 plus 6 by 5 which comes out to be 1.2. So you are getting 8 by 3.2, right? So 80 by 32. All right. So 5 by 2, so it's around how much? So 2.5 meter per second. This value comes out to be 2.5 meter per second. Got it? So this is the first question, right? Hope all of you got it. Next, we'll proceed to the next one. So all these questions we have taken from the memory of the students. Okay, so whatever the students, whatever they have written, so based on their memory, we have taken these questions and we try to discuss, right? So yesterday's 25th July question paper, right? And is the first shift question paper, right? We'll go to the next one. So a simple pendulum of length half meter has initial speed of 3 meter per second. So this is having an initial speed of 3 meter per second. So this is having initial speed of 3 meter per second. So already this is having, right? And when the pendulum mass is at lowest most point, at this point it is having 3 meter per second. Then when the string is making an angle of 60 degrees with the vertical, then what will be its speed? So here let us say the speed is v. Here the speed is 3 meter per second. At this position what? So from here to here, definitely it will lose kinetic energy and it is going to gain potential energy, H. So you can use the conservation of energy To solve this, so total mechanical energy at this point is same as total mechanical energy at this point. Total mechanical energy at this point, suppose if you select this as a datum, here itself as a datum, so it is having potential energy 0, only kinetic energy half mv square. Okay, so let us say this is v1, we call half m1 v1 square, right, plus potential energy 0, because here this only we are selecting as the datum. So is equal to final mechanical energy here half mv square kinetic energy plus potential energy at this point, which is mgh. And h easily you can calculate, because this value, if it is L, okay, this is L, this is L, so L cos 60, so this will be L by 2 and this is also L. L is already given as half meter, so L by 2 means it is 1 by 4 meter. So here you substitute 1 by 4 meter and initial speed here 3 meter per second you substitute, and you can nicely calculate the value for V. That's the speed at this point. And it is very simple. If you here it is 3 meter per second, means obviously here it should be less than 3. And if you look at all these options, so definitely all the other options are more than 3. So directly you can put less than 3, this value. Isn't it? Right or not? Simple. Okay. We'll go to the next one. A bulb has rated power of 200 watts and rated voltage of 100 volts, right? So if you take any bulb here, if you are taking any bulb, it will glow with some rated power and rated voltage. We all know that. So for that, so if you select this as the bulb, so whenever it is connected across 100 volts, then it is glowing with the power of 200 watts. Correct? Whenever the potential difference across the bulb is 100 volts, then only the power will be 200 watts. Now here what happens? But you are connecting across 200 volts, right? Now, but what should be the value of load resistance RL? So the bulb still it is working at rated voltage. Means here again you should get the power of 200 watts only. If you want to get again the power of 200 watts, means here the potential difference you should get it as 100 volts only, because 200 watts when it will get when it is having a potential difference of 100 volts. But you are using a battery of 200 volts, so the remaining 100 volts has to be here, correct? Total was 200, so here 100 volts, then only it will have a 200 watts power. So the from 200 already 100 here means 100 volts drop should be here. So that means these two potential drops are same. Here 100 volts, here 100 volts, same potential drop, correct? Same potential drop means this load resistance should be same as this resistance of the bulb. Bulb resistance and load resistance same. So resistance of the bulb, load resistance is same as resistance of bulb. It is same as the resistance of the bulb. And what is the resistance of the bulb? The resistance, because you know that the power is equal to V square upon R, right? So R you can get V square by P. So 100 into 100 by 200. Alright. So is it not 50 ohms? So load also will be 50 ohms. So easiest way what we made it. Okay. Hope all of you have got it. Alright. So we'll go to the next one. So two geometrical identical wires have Young's modulus y1 and y2. Then find the equivalent Young's modulus. So there are two geometrical wires here. So this is a wire 1 and this is a wire 2, right? Y1 and y2, two Young's modulus. So equivalent Young's modulus they are asking us to find. So these two are replaced with, these two joined together and replaced with only one single, and putting the same load, one single, then it will have y equivalent. Of course, each area is A. This area is A. This area is also A. So this area you are going to become 2A, because both you are combined together to have an area 2A. Now, these two wires you can treat like two wires which are in parallel, right? Like a springs which are in parallel. So that time you will be getting K equivalent. Since they are in parallel, you can use K1 plus K2. Where K1, K2 and K equivalent are nothing but stiffness constant. They are stiffness constant. Okay, so K equivalent is, K is equal to Ya by L. So Y equivalent 2A by L is equal to K1 is Y1 A by L, K2 Y2 A by L. So that gives Y equivalent is Y1 plus Y2 by 2. Alright. So Y1 plus Y2, 2. Answer. Fourth question. Right? Next. We'll proceed to the next one. So again, battery is connected to a resistor and an inductor for a long time. So this is a question on electromagnetic induction. There is a resistor, there is an inductor. The battery is already connected for a long time. So steady current is already flowing over here, right? So let us see that what is a steady current. What will be that steady current which is flowing here? I naught. Okay, so we know that this I naught is equal to V by R for a long time. So 20 by 10, so 2 amperes. It's already the steady current which is flowing because it's already in steady state. Long time battery is connected. So after that, now you remove the battery and short circuit. Now from 2 amperes, earlier it was flowing 2 amperes. Now immediately when you remove this and short circuit, now current will decrease. From 2 amperes it will decrease to 0. Okay. So when it is decreasing from 2 amperes to 0, you can use, this is a decay of current. Decay of current. I is equal to I naught into e power minus t by tau. So tau is L by R. So RT by L. That's all. So they are asking what is the current in the circuit after 1 millisecond after the battery is getting removed. So in this, once battery is removed and you are short circuiting after 1 millisecond of that, after that, so what will be the current? So now it decreases from 2 to 0. So after 1 millisecond, how much it's going to decrease? So this you have to find current 2 into e power minus RT by L. R is 10. Time is 1 milliseconds, 10 power minus 3 by L, inductance 10 millihenry, 10 into 10 power minus 3. That's all. So you will get 2 by E. Right? So E power minus 1, so 1 by E, that is 2 by E. E value substitute, 2.6 all. It will be less than, okay. So your answer will be coming out to be 0.7. Okay. This will be the, all right. Fine. So let us proceed to the next question. So here, question number 6. A particle of mass 4m at rest splits into two particles of mass 3m and m. Both the masses have different velocities, of course, because different masses, different velocities. Then find the ratio of their de Broglie's wavelength. So this particle, which was 4m initially at rest, and it is actually splitting into two particles. One is 3m and the other one is m. Right? So they may get some velocities, different velocities. Okay, no problem. So if it is getting v, definitely this will get 3v, because by the conservation of linear momentum initially at rest. Right? So final initial momentum before explosion same as final momentum. So this momentum and this momentum has to be same. And when the momentums are equal, definitely their de Broglie wavelengths are also equal, because de Broglie wavelength is always equal to h by p momentum. As long as the momentum of the particles are same, definitely the de Broglie's wavelengths are same. So both will have same de Broglie wavelength. 1:1 is the answer. No need to calculate the velocities and all. Correct? I hope you are getting my point. Next. An electron, a proton, and an alpha particle are getting accelerated by giving the same kinetic energy. Then which of the following is correct about a de Broglie wavelength? See, de Broglie wavelength, always you will be getting a question whenever it's a competitive examination like mains or any other competitive examination. De Broglie wavelength, always you will find a question. And this you will find a question, and the other one also, like these charged particles are entering a uniform magnetic field. What is the radius of the its circular path? So because both the formulas almost look like a little bit similar, there also you are using the kinetic energy, momentum, and all particles. Here also you are using the same. Okay, so we know that de Broglie wavelength. Okay, h by momentum or h by root of 2 km. Okay, momentum of the particles is equal to root of 2 times kinetic energy into mass. Or why the charged particles are getting kinetic energy? Because they are accelerated under some potential difference. So QV into M. Now because here they are asking accelerated by giving same kinetic energy, so use this. Kinetic energy is same. So easily your de Broglie wavelength inversely proportional to the square root of the mass. So whichever is having less mass, that will have more de Broglie wavelength. And we know electron will have less mass, then proton, and then alpha particle. So de Broglie wavelength of electron is more compared to proton compared to alpha particles. That will be the option. Right? Next. So sometimes the same question can be potential difference, same potential difference. Then this is same. Then you have to compare Q and M both. Of course, charge when you take electron and proton will have same charge. Again comes to masses. So that time lambda of electron greater than proton. And what about alpha particle also you need to compare. Charge is more, mass is also more. Correct? So then also you are getting the same result even if they are accelerated under same potential difference also. Alright. Next. So here, a ball of mass m is thrown towards a wall in two different situations. First situation, the ball strikes perpendicular to the wall. In the second case, the ball strikes at an angle of 45 degrees to the wall. Okay, so two cases, but you are actually throwing with the same velocity. The only thing is, wall is a little bit different. Then what will the ratio of impulse in the two cases? We know that impulse, whatever is there, it's a kind of oblique collision. First is a case of the head-on collision because striking perpendicular to the wall. Second one is a case of the oblique collision, is it? So first case first and start. So it is supposed to go like this. So perpendicular means here it is colliding, let us say like this, right? And actually assuming elastic wall. So if it is striking with u and theta, so this horizontal component u cos theta, okay, and when it is striking like this, horizontal is u cos theta, and if it is striking at some angle of 45 degrees, suppose I can take it here or I can take it here also, no problem. Anywhere it's striking at 45 degrees. Suppose I'm taking over here, so here it is striking like this. It's a B. So this is also u and theta. So horizontal component is still u cos theta here. Okay, so here also if you before collision, how to make for oblique collision? You are taking two components. So one is horizontal, one is like this. One is common normal, one is common tangent type. So this common normal is, seems to be the horizontal component, which will be u cos theta. Okay, same as this. And some vertical component, it's okay, v by u take, no problem. Right? Now this is a before collision. Before collision you have taken. After collision, what is happening? Since it is elastic collision, after collision, this red color I am showing. So it is rebounding with u cos theta because it's an elastic collision. Right? Now here also oblique collision, only separation speed is equal to elastic collision means what? Separation speed is equal to approach speed along the line of common normal. Common normal is this one. So this is a common normal. So approach is u cos theta. So separation also will be u cos theta. And there is no impulse, it will get in the vertical direction. So Vy is not going to change. Only this will change. So here also, and we know that the impulse is nothing but change in linear momentum. mu cos theta to mu cos theta. Here the change in linear momentum impulse, which is equal to change in linear momentum 2 mu cos theta, and here also mu cos change in linear momentum, that is the impulse, which is again 2 mu cos theta. Both the cases, the change in linear momentum in the first case and second case, it is same. Because only thing is, in the second case, only in the horizontal direction only momentum is changing. Vertical direction it remains the same because there is no impulse in the vertical direction. Right? Impulse acts along the common normal. That's what we have learned for in oblique collisions. Okay, so impulse is acting along the common normal during the collision. Right? Alright, so we'll proceed to the next one. So that means ratio of impulse, both are same. So you're getting 1:1. Clear? Right. Next. Photons of wavelength 400 nanometers strikes on a material with energy 1000 joules. So it's striking a material with photons are having energy 1000 joules in 10 seconds. What will the number of electrons leaving the material in 1 second then? Okay, just understand the question. So here's a material, right? So photons are incident on this photoelectric effect. Okay, so for every 10 seconds, how much energy is incident? Actually 1000 joules. Okay, so we need to find out the how many electrons are ejected per second. How many photoelectrons are ejected per second? Assuming 100% efficiency. 100% efficiency means how many photons are incident, that many number of electrons are emitted out. Right? So we need to know number of photons incident first. Number of photons incident. So that is nothing but total energy, okay, 1000 joules by energy of each photon. So total energy by energy of each photon. That gives you total number of photons incident. That too in 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Okay, but you want in 1 second. So you take divide by 10. So total energy is 1000 joules. And we need to find first of all energy of a photon, because you know the wavelength 400 nanometers. So energy of a photon 400 nanometers energy. So that is nothing but 4000 angstroms, right? So 12,400 by 4000, and this you will be getting energy in electron volts. If you substitute lambda in angstroms, you will get energy in electron volts, right? So 12,000. This is a direct formula, hc by lambda. Actually, it is hc by lambda. From that, we have derived like this, right? So you can use this, you can calculate this, and that into 10. So this is in electron volts again. You need to convert this electron volts into joules. So because 1 electron volt is nothing but 1.6 in 10 power minus 19 joules. So here you will be getting 1000 joules by energy of each photon. So this will be around approximately, you will be getting as 12.4 by 4, 3.1, okay, 3.1 into charge of each electron. So that is 1.6 in 10 power minus 19, 10. Right? So these are the number of photons incident in 1 second. So that many, how many photons are incident in 1 second? Same number of electrons will be coming out per second. So approximately this is 1.6, 3.1, this will be around 5. Okay, so 5 and 1000 is there, so you'll be getting 10 power 4, 10 square, 19, close to value 10 power minus 19 will go up. So the close to, please calculate that value. Okay, so how much you are going to get? Check it. Simple. The energy of each photon, what you are taking, hc by lambda, that you can use it directly in this formula and you can take it. Okay, fine. Next. assuming 100% efficiency. Next. Yeah. Radioactive nuclei of initial number of active nuclei is N naught. Okay, initially N naught nuclei were there. Decays N naught by 4 active nuclei. Okay, N naught by 4 have got decayed. So left over are 3 N naught by 4 actually. In time t1. So here when time t is equal to 0, how many nucleides are there? N naught. After some time t1, how many are left? So decays N naught by 4 active nuclei. Right? N naught by 4 have got decayed. So left over are 3 N naught by 4. Right? After time 2, T2, how many are left out? N naught by 2. So actually, from here to here, if you see, this is nothing but half-life. Because N naught to N naught by 2, this is half-life only. Okay, so you need to, T2 is nothing but half-life. Half-life is nothing but ln 2 by lambda. We know this. And what about T1? T1 you need to find out. So that is by the relation n is equal to n naught into e power minus lambda t, correct? Number of nucleides left after some time t is equal to initial number of nucleides into e power minus lambda t. Common nucleides are left 3 n naught by 4 is equal to n naught into e power minus lambda into t1. So you can find out t1. So e power lambda t1 is equal to 4 by 3, right? So you can get ln of 4 by 3. So T1 is equal to ln 4 by 3 by lambda. That is T1. And this is T2 is ln 2 by lambda. So what is the ratio, right? The ratio between T1 and T2. T1 is ln 4 by 3 by lambda by ln 2 by lambda. So that lambda gets cancelled. So you'll be getting ln 4 by 3 by ln 2. So 2 ln 2. Okay. Ln 4 minus ln 3 by ln 2. So around ln 2 is 0.693 and ln 3 is 1.06 like that. So substitute that and get the answer. Okay. So after doing all that, so we'll be getting option A. Check. Next. Okay. So we are going to the next one. So question number 11. For an ideal gas, CV is a specific heat at constant volume and CP is a specific heat at constant pressure. If at some temperature they are related as Cp minus Cv is equal to R. This is a as per ideal gas equation, right? And some other temperature they are related as Cp minus Cv is not R, rather 1.1 into R. Then which is correct? Depending on the temperatures, they are asking us to compare the temperatures. So Cp minus Cv is equal to R. This is a temperature Tp. And another temperature Cp minus Cv is equal to 1.1 R. This is another temperature Tq. Here it is an ideal gas equation it is holding. And the gases behave like ideal gases at high temperatures and low pressures. High temperatures and low pressures. So definitely this temperature has to be greater than the other one. Tp has to be greater than Pq. Clear? Simple by the basic definition of the ideal gas. So high temperatures and low pressures, the gases can behave like ideal gases. Okay, right. So go to the next one. So find the equivalent circuit. So this circuit is looking like total. Is it a NOR? Total circuits gate, logic gates. So this total is looking like a NOR gate or OR gate or AND gate or NAND gate. Okay. So for that, how to check? So we can check like this by drawing the truth table if you want. So this is A, giving some inputs to A, B and trying to get the final result. First, if I give the input, step by step I am doing. Okay. 0 and 0, if I give the input 0 and 0. Okay. This is an AND gate. So whenever you give an input 0, here 0 and 0 you are getting. Right? 0, 0. AND means you will get 0, but NAND you are getting 1. Correct? And here also 0, 0, and it is 1. So 1 and 1, okay. If it is a OR gate, you were getting 1, but it's a NOR gate, okay, not of OR. So you'll be getting here 0. First one is when I take 0, 0, Okay, so we'll be getting 0. We'll draw the truth table. I'm showing you the truth table. Second one, when I take 1 and 1, 1, 1. So you'll get 1 and 1 here. Okay. 1 and 1 inputs. So both 1 and 1, you are getting input here 0. Here also 1 and 1, here input 0. So 0, 0 will go. Okay. So 1 you will get here. That means here you are getting 1. When I take 1 and 1, you are getting 1. Similarly, when I take here 0 and here 1, okay, 0 and 1. 0 when I am taking, I am getting here, okay, so 0, 0, you are getting 1, right? So here if I take 1, I am getting, here if I am taking 1, I am taking 1 and 1, I am getting 0. So 1 and 0, if I input here, 1 and 0, if I input here, okay, I'm getting, if it was OR gate, I'm supposed to get 1, but it's a NOR gate, you are getting 0 here. That means here you will get 0. So reverse also, if I take 1, 0, also you will get 0. So then if you look at this table, this is definitely this is the final result, what I am showing you. Final result. So when 0 and 0 inputs, you are getting 0, 1 and 1, you are getting 1. But anything is 0 here, you are getting 0. So this is definitely a AND gate, looking like total resultant is like an AND gate, right? So you can draw the truth table and you can show it nicely, fine? So this is an AND gate. Okay. All right. Next. So here two blocks of masses 800 grams and 200 grams are attached by two springs of spring constant 4K and K in series as shown in the figure. Find the angular frequency of oscillation of the system. This is a two block oscillator and it's not a one spring, it's a two springs, right? So two block oscillator with two springs. This can be replaced with the two springs can be replaced with one spring of K equivalent, and two blocks oscillations can be replaced with one block whose mass you are taking as a reduced mass, correct? So reduced mass, where reduced mass is equal to m1 m2 by m1 plus, and K equivalent, since they are in series, so K equivalent is equal to K1 K2 by K1 plus K2, right? Now angular frequency omega will be equal to root of K equivalent by reduced mass. That's all. Okay. So K equivalent comes out to be, K equivalent, how much you will get here? K1 K2 by K1 plus K2 means you will get 4K by 5. 4K by 5 and substitute the value of K. Okay, you are getting 16. Then what about new value? M1 M2 upon M1 plus M2, right? So for that, so 16 into 10 power 4 by 1000, 160. Yes, 160 grams. So if you substitute here 16 by 160, 160 into 10 power minus 3, right? So omega value, how much is you are getting, is completely, so 10 power minus 2, so 10 square, so you get 10 radians per second. That is the question number 13. Here, so two body oscillator, so K under root of K equivalent by, so nu is the reduced mass, K equivalent is the two springs equivalent, because they are in series. Equivalent is 1 by K equivalent is equal to 1 by K1 plus 1 by K2, so that you are substituting as K1 K2 by K1 plus K2. Okay, right. Next, a conducting loop of radius 0.1 meter has a time variable magnetic field B of t is equal to 4 by 100 times 1 minus t by 100. So this is a time varying magnetic field. Magnetic field is changing with respect to time. Then find the energy dissipated till the magnetic field becomes 0 if the resistance of the loop is 0.01 ohms. So there is a loop, conducting loop, it is placed in a time varying magnetic field. So this conducting loop, what you are taking, is placed in a time varying magnetic field. So then EMF will be induced in the loop, and that EMF induced divided by the resistance of the loop will be the current induced, right? So when the current is flowing in this loop for some time, definitely the resistance is getting heated up, so energy will be dissipated. So that energy dissipated you are asking. Okay, in how much time that energy dissipated? Until the magnetic field is becoming 0. So first let us find out in how much time the magnetic field is going to become 0. So magnetic field is a function of time, 4 by 100, 1 minus t by 100. And this has to become 0. So for t value, you will be getting as 100 seconds. Right? So 1 minus t by 100 is equal to 0. Right? So 100 seconds. So that means you have to find the total energy dissipated. Energy dissipated is equal to whatever the power that is dissipated in this, which you can use I square R into T. Okay, and I is what? EMF induced, so that is V square by R square. So totally EMF induced, you can write EMF induced as E square upon R times T. This is the total energy dissipated. And how do you find the EMF induced? So we know that Faraday's law, EMF induced is nothing but rate of change of the flux. Of course, area is constant, but magnetic field is changing with respect to time. So EMF induced is what? You can write area into dB by dt. Okay, area times dB by dt. dB by dt rate of change of the magnetic field. Area is constant, right? Since it's a conducting loop, area you can use pi r square into what about dB by dt? Just if you differentiate this with respect to time, okay, so minus of this, so differentiating this with respect to time, so you'll be getting what? So this is 4 by 10 power 4, right? Because it's a linear function. So dB by dt, you'll be getting 4 by 10 power 4 times t. So that will be, right? So pi r square. This is a EMF. Substitute r 0.1 whole square. Substitute all this. Then e square by r into t. If you substitute, then you'll get the answer. Okay, 16 into 10 power minus 7 joules. Okay, clear? Whatever the EMF induced, E square by R. So this is a combination of two questions, like one is electromagnetic induction, EMF induced, and the other one is power dissipated or energy dissipated, power into time. Power is E square R, right? Next, this question, an electric field of a wave propagating as E is equal to E naught cos of kz minus 5.6 in 10 power 3 t. So it's something like it's reflecting from the mirror at z is equal to E. Okay, so actually it is moving whenever I take E is equal to E naught cos of kz minus omega t format. That means it is propagating along z axis. We know that what we have studied in waves, general equation sin kx minus omega t, it is propagating in x direction, and it is, since it is a minus is there, so it is propagating in positive z direction. Propagating in positive z direction, no doubt. Okay, so since when it is propagating in positive z direction, assuming that this is z and this is z is equal to a, here you have a mirror, so it is propagating like this. This is a mirror. Okay, so mirror is like a denser medium, so it will reflect back. Reflecting back with the same amplitude, so it reflects back and moving in the negative z direction. So whenever it is moving in a negative z direction, means you have to use plus. And then it will also have a phase change of pi. So your answer is same amplitude cos of kz plus omega t plus pi. Because whenever the wave is getting reflected from a denser medium, its phase is going to change by 180 degrees, right? So E naught. So this is the answer. and if you remove this pi, you'll get minus over here. So you can write nicely minus E naught cos of kz plus omega t is the answer, right? So that is the equation of the reflected wave. This is a reflected wave equation, please, right? Minus E naught cos of kz plus omega t, same omega, same t. So okay, it can't be minus because reflected wave is going in the negative z direction, so it has to be plus kz plus omega t time. And since it is having a phase change of 180, so that minus. And what about lambda and frequency? And frequency is not this value, this is omega value, so this is wrong. And lambda also, please check it. When k value is not given, how to get the lambda value? Correct or not? So you cannot find A, B is wrong, C is wrong, so D is the correct answer. Got it? Okay. Question number 16. So two similar charges of magnitude q are fixed at a distance of 2 meters, and another opposite charge of same magnitude is brought at the center point between the two charges and given a slight displacement along the equatorial direction and released. Then what is the angular frequency of oscillations of the opposite charge will be what? So here there are two charges q and q which are fixed at some distance of 2 meters. Okay, so this is 2 meters, let us say. Now here these two are fixed and there is another charge which is having same magnitude but opposite charge. Same magnitude but opposite charge. So here you take minus q here. When you take minus q, it will be at rest. Because of this force and this force due to this charge and this charge, this minus q will be at rest. But when you give slight displacement like this here, so because of this, it will be attracted like this, because of this, it will be attracted like this. So there will be a net force towards the mean position again. So because of which, it will try to oscillate, correct? So we are interested to find what is the angular frequency of the oscillations, right? So let us say you are giving a slight displacement of x, right? So let us say this is R, and this is F force, right? So here, and if you take this as some theta, so this F you can resolve into two components. One is F cos and F sin. Here also F cos and F sin, because this is theta, this is theta. F cos cancels F sin and F sin. So the net force will be 2F sin theta, right? So this is a force, electrostatic force because of Q and minus Q. The force acting on minus q because of this q, this is a force. For that you are taking only vertical component, downward component, which is f sin theta. For this also f sin theta, both will be getting added up, and these two is getting cancelled. Okay, now so that is a force to f sin theta, and this you take it as f is what and sin theta is what, x upon this. You can take it as something like here to here distance, you can take it as d. This is also d. Okay, so 2 into force, this force you can write it as kq square by d square. And what about sin theta? Sin theta you can write as sin theta is x by d. So x by d, so total d cube you are going to get. Okay, this is a net force. But you are able to show that this net force is a function of x, displacement of the particle from its mean position, so SHM, right? So you are able to show that 2kq square by d cube whole times x. Is it not the net force directly proportional to x? So definitely it's a condition of simple harmonic motion. So this, if you try to compare with m omega square into x, so what is the omega value? Compare these two. So the omega square value will be 2kq square by d cube and m. So that is omega. So what is omega value then? Whole power 1 by 2. That's all. So k value 9 into 10 power 9. Q value, q square given, value k value you know, mass, okay, so 0.2 grams given, and d cube, again they are asking this d cube. So you can write this d cube as, because they have given only r, right? So how to get the value for d? So you can write d square is equal to, okay, almost d you can, because x is small, d you can replace with r. That's all. So d can be replaced with r, no problem at all, because x is very small, right? So r cube you can put it in place of d. R is what? 1 meter, because this total is what? 2 meter. So directly you can substitute all those, get the value for angular frequency, right? So that is a simple harmonic motion combination with electrostatics, right? So next we'll proceed to the next one. So this is our next question. Water drops are falling from a tap in regular intervals of time. A drop falls from the tap, and after 4 seconds of falling, the drop is 34.3 meter away from the next drop after 4 seconds. Then drops are falling at the rate of, so regular intervals they are dropping, right? So this is a tap, let us say. Okay, this is a tap. First drop is falling, and after 4 seconds, so after this, after 4 seconds, this time it might have traveled some distance after 4 seconds. That time it is at a distance, if this is already traveled 4 seconds, the previous drop, okay, the next drop of this distance they have given as 34.3. Which drop it is, we don't know. If this is the first drop, this will be the second drop, third, fourth, how many drops are there, we don't know, right? So this has traveled for 4 seconds, right? So definitely this drop might have traveled for how many seconds? Is it not has traveled for 3 seconds? Correct? If the time interval between the drops are 1 second. But here they are asking us to find time interval, right? So here, how much displacement this will have in 4 seconds? Half gt square, no? Half gt square. Half gt square. Because initial velocity, anyway, it is 0. So you can write g 9.8, they are asking half into 9.8, 4 square 16, 9.8. You can get that particular value. So this is the which some drop which you have got. So when this has already traveled for 4 seconds, and time interval, let time interval between each drops is t. Okay, so this is already traveled 4 seconds, means this might have traveled definitely 4 minus t seconds. So this displacement is up to 4 minus t seconds, right? So let's say this is a first drop, you will calculate. Second drop, half g, how much time it has already fallen? It has fallen for how much time? 4 minus t. Because after t seconds it will start. Time lag. Okay, this has traveled for 4 seconds. This has traveled for less than 4 seconds, which is 4 minus t, where t is the time interval between the first drop and second drop, right? So half g into 4 minus t whole square. And that value is already given as, so they have given s1 minus s2. This displacement s1, this is s2. S1 minus s2 is 34.3. So from this you can get the value for t. Easily you will get the value for t. That's the time interval between the. So once you know the time interval between the drops, we can get in 1 second how many drops are falling, right? So you can get how many drops are falling for each second, right? So this is one way, or else just trial and error also you can make it. If you think that one drop in 1 second, this is 4 seconds, this is 3 seconds. Okay, so half gt square, 4 seconds if you take, and 3 seconds how much displacement it is having. Like that also you can cross check and verify, right? So once you know the time interval between the each drops, you can get the how many drops are falling in each per second. These are so many time per interval between successive drops, right? So clear, first drop 4 seconds, second drop 4 minus t. That way you can make it and you can solve. Next question. In Young's double slit experiment, distance between the slits are varied as t is equal to a plus b sine omega t. Distance between the slits is varying like this. So d is equal to a plus b sine of omega t. That means, so d maximum value is it can be a plus b also, and minimum value it is a minus b. When the distance between the two slits is changing, definitely the fringe width also changes, because the fringe width will depend on the lambda capital D by small d. Definitely it will depend on the distance between the two slits, right? So maximum fringe width when the distance is between the two slits is minimum. So that is lambda capital D by a minus b. This is a maximum fringe width, and minimum fringe width you will get lambda capital D when d is maximum, which is a plus b. That's all. And then they're asking difference, this minus this. Okay, so beta max minus beta minimum, that is equal to lambda capital D if I take it common. So this minus this, so a square minus b square, right? So a plus b minus of, so you will get 2b, because a plus b minus of a minus b, 2b you will get. So 2b lambda capital D by a square minus b square, right? So that is this question. Now I'll proceed to the next one. Match the following. So here 4 options are given. Each option is nothing but a triangle law of addition of the vectors, and some options are given. If you look at the first one, according to triangle law of addition of the vectors, okay, so what you can make it? So first one is a square a bar plus c bar is equal to b bar, first one, right? And second one, so if two sides of a triangle are taken same order, two vectors are taken as the two sides of a triangle taken in the same order, third closing side taken in the reverse order gives you the resultant. Here a bar plus b bar is equal plus c bar, all are in the same, so c bar is equal to 0, because a bar plus b bar c bar all are same, hence a bar plus b bar plus c bar is equal to 0. And third one, if you take a bar is like this, c bar is like this, b bar is like this, so c bar plus b bar is equal to a bar, c bar plus b bar is equal to a bar. And fourth one, a bar plus b bar, a bar is there, b bar is there like this, and this opposite, so c bar. So which options you can make it clearly? First one is a bar plus c bar is equal to b bar you should get, and this is this d is okay for this, okay, and for this one you can make it a bar plus c bar is equal to b bar, a bar plus c bar is equal, yes, c will be okay for this, and for this cb is equal to a, right, c plus b is equal to a. So which one you will get? C bar plus B bar is equal to A bar. Yes, B will be getting suitable for this, and for this one, A bar plus B bar is equal to C bar. Yes, A. So first is C, second is D, third is B, and fourth is A. Okay. Simple triangle law of addition of the vectors. Right? Next. In a parallel plate capacitor, distance between the plates is D. If dielectric of variable permeability, okay, E is filled as epsilon naught of, this is permittivity, not permeability, filled as epsilon of x is epsilon naught plus kx, and epsilon of x is epsilon naught plus k into d minus x. So like this you are filling. So that means when you take this parallel plate capacitor and you are trying to fill it like this, so exactly till d by 2. Okay. So here it's increasing, epsilon naught plus kx increasing. So x equal to 0, epsilon naught. At x equal to d by 2, epsilon naught plus kd by 2 increased, and from here onwards again it will decrease. So x equal to d, again it will become epsilon naught. So again dielectric will increase and then decrease. And this one and this one, you'll get how it is increasing, same way it is decreasing. Right or not? So this is a capacitor with increasing dielectric, and this is a capacitor, same way it is decreasing dielectric. And if you look at this, how the dielectric is changing with respect to x, right? Initially epsilon naught, from epsilon naught it will start, it will increase and then it will decrease. Same way, right? So if you can find what is the capacitance of this, you will get same capacitance here also. And this capacitance and this capacitance, both of them are in series. So how to solve? Only for this I will solve. This one is also same as this one. Okay, first I'll solve for this. How do I solve for this? So take some small element, distance x dx. So like this, all are in series. So you know 1 by C equivalent. Only for this one I am solving. Okay, is equal to, because all such small elements are in series. So integral 1 by dc. Okay, so what is dc? You try to find out here. What is dc? K. Okay, so k value at a distance of x is epsilon naught plus kx. Okay, that is already epsilon naught a by dx. This is a dc. So 1 by dc comes out to be dx by epsilon naught plus kx whole into a. This is 1 by c equivalent only from here to here, and that you are integrating from 0 to d by 2. You'll get this. Okay, so this is a logarithmic function. Substitute the limits, right? So after getting this value, okay, this capacitance you are getting finally, and this also will be the same capacitance, right or not? So then this capacitance and this capacitance same. So final C equivalent, if you take two capacitors, whenever you have two capacitors like this, same C and C, C equivalent means is it not C by 2? So first you find C equivalent here, and then answer is C equivalent by 2 will be the answer. Because same type of capacitor here also, same type of capacitor here also. No need to find for this, again integration and all, only find from here to here. This also will be the same, because how it increases, same it will decrease. Right or not? Variation, if you see this graph, how it is increasing, same it is going to decrease also. Right? So like that. So here you can integrate this ln of epsilon naught plus kx by k, correct? And substitute the limits, you'll get the value for C equivalent. After that, C equivalent by 2 will be the answer. Clear? So nice question. So variable uh, permeability, right? So how the dielectric, how it is varying, how it is increasing, same it will decrease, right? Okay, all right, fine. Next, the position of an object varies as r bar is equal to 10 lambda beta t square I cap plus 5 beta into t minus 5 into j cap. Find the time at which angular momentum becomes same as that of at t is equal to 0 about the origin. See, this is a position vector which is varying with respect to time, means object is moving. Whenever object is moving, it will have linear momentum, and moment of linear momentum is nothing but our angular momentum. And angular momentum is always taken about a point, about some point, which here we are taking about the origin, right? So we know that this angular momentum about the origin, suppose here particle is same as that at t is equal to 0 also, right? So first of all, t is equal to 0, we have to find. So t is equal to 0, where is the particle? We have to check. And after some time, again, angular momentum is same as at t is equal to 0. So generally, if particle is here, its momentum is like this. This is your r bar. Okay, so angular momentum is given by r bar cross p bar m into v bar. Correct? Fine. Next. So here, first, this is r bar. cross V bar. So M common R bar cross V bar is not L bar. So you have to get R V bar also. How do we get V bar? Differentiate the position vector, you will get the velocity vector, right? So you'll be getting 20 lambda beta into t cap, right? So plus, so differentiate this also with respect to time phi beta, right? T minus s. That is your velocity vector. Okay. Now at t is equal to 0, let us check. T is equal to 0. If you check t is equal to 0, what is r bar? Because we want to find angular momentum same as that t is equal to 0 about origin, right? So at t is equal to 0, if you take what is r bar? R bar will be, can I write this as 0, and what about this one? 0 minus 5 minus 25 beta j cap. Is it not R bar? And what is V bar? Here t is equal to 0, you put t is equal to 0 when you put, so is it not 5 beta j cap? And actually at t is equal to 0, your velocity is in j cap and R bar is in minus j cap. So when you take angular momentum, what is angular momentum? M into R bar plus V bar, no? And if you take R bar cos B bar at t is equal to 0, okay, both are in angle is 180 degrees, so angular momentum is 0. So t is equal to 0, actually the angular momentum is 0 at t is equal to 0. And again at what time, again the angular momentum will become 0. Again at what time the angular momentum is going to become 0. For that, because at t is equal to 0, initial angular momentum is 0. After how much time the angular momentum becomes same as that at t is equal to 0, means angular momentum has to become 0 again. When it will become 0 again, that we have to check. Okay, so velocity is in x direction, it is accelerating, y direction it is a constant, right? And r bar is changing like this. So what we can make it? So you can write angular momentum is equal to m into r bar cos v bar. Just simply take r bar, this one, as a function of time, and v bar also this one, function of time. Okay, do the cross product, you will get as a function of time, right? Once you are getting as a function of time, some I cap and j cap, individually both you equate to 0, you will get the time. That means m into r bar, so 10 lambda beta t square I cap plus 5 beta into t minus 5 j cap. This is one vector cross. Another vector v bar means you can write 20 lambda beta t cap plus 5 beta into this cross product has to become 0. So get the value for t. Why am I equating this angular momentum to 0? Because this angular momentum is same as initial angular momentum, which is already I got it as 0. Right? Clear? So do the cross product and solve for t, get the answer. Right? So one more thing is, at that time this has to become 0, means this and this should come in the same direction. That way also you can make it. Okay. Same direction they can come. So, or directly do the cross product. You know how to do this cross product matrix method, then get the value for, that's the way, right? Okay, next. The message signal xm is equal to 10 sine of 2 pi into 10 power 5 t is amplitude modulated with carrier signal xc equal to 20 sine of 2 pi into 10 power 7 t. Then find the half of the bandwidth. What is the half of bandwidth they are asking us to find? So we know that this bandwidth, 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 is it not 2 times of omega m? Because the difference in the side bands, because this is omega c carrier frequency, okay, so omega c minus omega m, omega c plus omega m, three frequencies. This is a carrier, and here this will be your bandwidth. So bandwidth will be this minus this, So you'll be getting 2 times of omega m. This is a bandwidth. And half of the bandwidth means half of bandwidth. Half of bandwidth means simply omega m. But they're asking only the frequency, right? So in terms of frequency, what is omega? Omega of the message signal is in on this one, omega. And so FM will be, okay, so omega upon 2 pi. That will be 2 pi into 10 power 5 by, okay, 2 pi. That is 10 power 5. 10 power 5 hertz frequency they have given, not in radians per second, they have given in hertz. So you can say 100 into kilohertz. 100 into 10 power 3, which is 100 kilohertz. You can clear. Simple. This will be the bandwidth. Right. These two are called as side bands. Right. Those two are called as side. All right. Next. Circuit shown is in the balanced state in which the galvanometer shows no deflections. No deflection. This should not show any deflection. So this is showing zero deflection. Given that wire AB has, this wire AB is having 0.01 ohm per centimeter of resistance, find the maximum possible value of voltage that can be measured by this setup. How much maximum value of voltage you can measure by using this particular setup. For that, see here. When this is showing 0, we know that this current will flow like this only. And here there will not be any current here. This current is flowing only like this. And they are asking what is the maximum possible value of voltage that can be measured by using this particular setup. So here is our potentiometer wire. Okay, this total potentiometer wire. The maximum you can measure is what? Up to here here you can measure, right or not? Because potential drop across the potentiometer wire is only balanced by this cell. The EMF of the cell is balanced by the potential drop across the potentiometer wire. The maximum case you can put it over here. That means this potential drop is the maximum value what you can measure, the value of the voltage. So what is the potential drop from here to here? Is the resistance. First you try to take the resistance of the potentiometer wire. Potentiometer wire total length is 1000 centimeters and it is having 0.01 ohm per centimeter. Okay, so per each centimeter is 0.01. So for 1000 centimeters, you will be getting 10 ohms. This will be 10 ohms. And here it is already given 6 ohms here and 20 volts. So what is the current? That current into this potential drop. Or else you can make it, the current is flowing like this, no? So this total drop of 20 volts will drop here and here. Current is same. So potential drop directly proportional to resistance. Resistance 10:6. 10:6 means 5:3. So 5:3. So 5 by 8 of 20 will get it as 25 by 2. So around 12.5 will get the maximum drop, that is here 12.5. The remaining here you will be getting a drop as 7.5. Like this when the current is flowing. So maximum drop what you can get in the potentiometer wire is 12.5. So maximum possible this EMF what you can put, what you can measure, possible value of voltage that can be measured is the maximum drop, which is 12.5 volts. That's all. Clear? Simple. Total potential drop. So that means you are putting galvanometer up to here. So here to your potential drop, that is the maximum value what you can measure. Okay, so that much cell only you can get the zero reading. So that means when you are putting 12.5 volts, exactly at this point it will show 0 for unknown battery of 12.5 volts. That is the mechanism of potentiometer, right? So good question. We'll go to the next one. Right. The temperature versus time graph for two different gases A and B having same number of moles are shown in the figure. If heat is supplied by the same rate to both the gases, then the ratio of specific heat capacity of both the gases, specific heat capacity. So whenever you are supplying heat to the gases, its temperature may increase, okay, or sometimes it may not increase also, like in isothermal process. But here both the gas temperature is increasing, so both are not isothermal process. So, and we know that Q in any process you have to take NC, okay. So if you take delta T, where C is the molar specific heat for that process, specific heat for that process. So molar specific heat always depends on the process in which you are supplying. So two cases are given in which you are supplying the heat, right? So here I can take it like this. So in the first case, I will write dq by dt, some n1 moles, same number of moles, okay, so instead of n1, so n only you put it, nc1 in the first case, okay, so dt by dt. This is the first case, dq by dt. The second case, dq by dt is the number of moles are same, C2 into dt by dt in the second. This is the first case, this is the second. And if heat is supplied at the same rate of supply of heat is same. So I mean dq by dt in the first case and second case are same. So this and this are same. So that means this value and this value has to be same. So it means that C1 into dt by dt in the first case is same as C2 into dt by dt in the second case. dt by dt means from the graph you can pull out dt by dt is nothing but the slope of this, right? Rate of increase of temperature with respect to time. So first case I am taking as A. For A, what is the slope? 120 by 3, correct? So this by this, so this is 120 and this is 3. So I'm not getting 40 here. And second case, dt by dt, so 90 by 6, okay, so 90 by 6, they're getting 50. So C1 by C2 will be 15 upon 40. Okay. So 538. So 3 by 8 is the correct answer. So good question, this one also. Right? So for any process, your Q is always equal to NC delta T, where C is the molar specific heat in that particular process. Right? Two different processes are there. Right. We'll go to the next one. For a magnetic material, the relative change in magnetic susceptibility is equal to 2.2 in 10 power minus 4. Find the percentage change in the magnetic. So they are asking relative change in the magnetic susceptibility. So magnetic susceptibility, relative change. So change in magnetic susceptibility, magnetic delta X, okay, relative change, no? So you can simply put xi, no? Magnetic susceptibility you are putting as xi. So change in xi by original xi. Is it not change by original? Is it not relative change? So this is given as 2.2 in 10 power minus 4. This value is given. Then they are asking what is the percentage change in the magnetic field? Delta B by B into 100 they are asking. This value they are asking. How to get it? We know the relation between susceptibility and relative permeability. And your magnetic field is also having a relation for relative permeability. So that relative permeability is equal to 1 plus susceptibility. Agree? And then susceptibility is actually far greater than 1. Okay, so actually it's a magnetic material. So we can treat it like ferromagnetic. So susceptibility is very much greater than 1. Right? So that time you can write delta mu r by mu r is almost equal to delta of x by delta of psi by psi. Okay. So change, this is a relative change in permeability is equal to relative change provided when x is far greater than 1. Under this condition you can nicely write this. Alright. Then we also know that delta B by B into 100 is equal to delta mu r by mu r into, okay, and this is same as delta xi by xi. Okay, so delta xi by xi is equal to and this value is nothing but 2.2 10 power minus 4 into 100 percentage change because they are asking. So 2.2 into 10 power minus 2, okay, 0.022. That is the answer, right? So clear? So this you can only use when it's far greater than 1. Hope, because it's a completely magnetic material, so you can assume like a ferromagnetic material. So susceptibility is very much greater than 1. Under that circumstances, you can easily solve this, right? Next. Ray is incident at an angle 30 degrees on the interface of a diamond and vacuum from the diamond side. Okay, from diamond side. So diamond is obviously a denser medium and it's going into the rarer medium. There is every chance that total internal reflection taking place. So this you can take it as diamond and vacuum. And what is the refractive index of diamond? 2.42, right? So critical angle between these two, critical angle will be, critical angle is sine inverse 1 by nu of diamond, because nu of vacuum is 1, right? So that means nu is greater than 2. If had it been 2, then critical angle you could have got 30 degrees. And since this is greater than 2, so this total value will be, critical angle is definitely less than 30 degrees. Confirm? Because this total value will be less than 1 by 2. If nu is equal to 2, then you will get 30 degrees. So total sine inverse 1 by 2, 30 degrees. But 2.42, definitely less than 1 by 2. So theta also less than 30 degrees. Okay. So critical angle is less than 30 degrees. Some value. But the ray is incident from denser to rarer at an angle of 30 degrees. Definitely this angle, whatever it is incident, is definitely greater than the critical angle. Because critical angle is, let us say, some 25 degrees. But here it is hitting at, this angle is greater than the critical angle. So definitely it will have total internal reflection, no doubt about that. Total internal reflection compulsory. That's the answer. So the incident ray will not get refracted. No refraction, total internal reflection. Yes. Okay. All right. So maybe the other answers also. Actually, if you think the ray will not get refracted if incident at 53 degrees. If it is incident at 53, still more than different. There also it will have total internal reflection, right? So B also seems to be correct. And this angle maybe 22 degrees. You have to check. There is always total internal reflection for angle greater than 30. Okay. So actually, whenever angle is greater than not only 30, this also seems to be correct. Because it's a memory based, so the students are not remembering those options all, right? But here the first one is correct. So we know the concept properly. As long as the ray incident angle is greater than 30 or even 30, it will have a total internal. Because the critical angle is less than 30, you have to check, because this is sine inverse 1 by 2.42. Cannot calculate that. We know that it is less than 30. Maybe 22, 24 exactly. Right? Okay. Fine. Next question. Monoatomic gas is filled in a piston cylinder arrangement. Its temperature changing from T1 and to T2 and length of the gas column changes from L1 to L2 against the atmosphere. Then the ratio of T1 by T2. Okay. So whenever you have piston cylinder arrangement, right? So let us say it is like this. Piston is massless. So as long as you are supplying the heat, definitely it will lift up. So it is doing the work against the atmospheric pressure. So this is definitely a constant pressure process. It is a constant pressure process. Length of the gas column changes from L1 to L2. So initially it was L1, and after giving all the heat, then it became L2 against constant pressure. And at constant pressure, we know that your volume directly proportional to the absolute temperature. constant pressure. How can I say the pressure is constant? Because it's a piston and smooth piston. So as long as you are giving heat, it's doing the work against atmospheric pressure. Every time the pressure inside and outside has to be same, and outside pressure is always constant, so inside also should be. So it is a process of constant pressure. So volume is equal to area into length. Okay. So V1 by V2 is equal to T1 upon T2. So V1 cross sectional area of the piston, cross sectional area, you can take it as A. So V1 is AL1 by AL2 is equal to T1 upon T2. They are asking T1 by T2 is equal to L1 by L2. Alright, T1 by T2 will be equal to L1 by L2. Right? That is the question number 27. Next. 28. The next question, a particle is revolving around a planet with a maximum distance x and minimum distance y. So particle is actually revolving around a planet in an elliptical orbit, right? So it is revolving in an elliptical orbit, let us say. So we assume that this is a planet and this is a small particle. So sometimes it is a minimum distance, it is a maximum distance. So here its speed is v1, here its speed is v2. So minimum distance, this is r1, and maximum distance you can take it as r2, right? So one thing is sure that here the velocity will be less because it has to satisfy the angular momentum also. Angular momentum at this position and this position it is same. Angular momentum is called linear momentum into perpendicular distance. Linear momentum mv1 into r1 is same as mv2 linear momentum into perpendicular distance r2. Okay. So minimum distance, maximum is x, minimum is y. This is they are calling x and this they are calling it as y. Right? And maximum velocity is v naught. So here it is v naught. And this they are asking us to find. Right? So m is getting cancelled. V1 is v naught. R1 is y. And V2 we need to find out. And R2 is the maximum distance they are giving as x. So what is V2? V naught y upon x. That's it. V naught y upon, okay. Option B. Answer. Clear? Next. So we'll solve to the next question. Right. So a radioactive material of mass number 198 decays with a half-life of 3 days. Half-life is 3 days. Okay, mass number is 198. Initial amount of radioactive material is 2 mg, then its initial activity will be. So how do you calculate this activity of this material? Activity R. Okay, so activity is always equal to lambda into n. Initial activity. So initial activity R naught is lambda into n naught. So you need to find number of nuclides initially, right? Half-life is given. So when half-life is given, you can find the lambda value. And initial number of nuclides, how much? Because the mass number is 198. Okay, so we know that 198 grams will have Avogadro number 6.023 into 10 power 23 nuclides are there. Then what about 2 mg? 2 mg. Okay, 2 milligrams. So 2 into 10 power minus 3 grams will have n naught. So can't you get the value for n naught? Yes, you can get it. So the n naught value will be 6.023 into 10 power 23 into 2 into 10 power minus 3 by 198. Then your initial activity will be R naught ln 2 by half-life. Sorry, lambda is half-life ln 2 by half-life. Because half-life is ln 2 by lambda. So ln 2 is 0.693 by half-life is 3 days. Now the question is, this is in 3 days, right? So they are asking per second, correct? So I have to convert this into seconds. 3 days, each day 24 hours. And 1 hour, okay, 1 hour is how many seconds? 3600 seconds. This is a total lambda into n naught. You can write n naught. All this value you can put it, substitute the value of n naught here, and just it's all about your calculations. How best you can do that calculations? So many disintegrations per second, DPS, disintegrations per second. Okay, the 10 power and all, because all these are 16.6 same, just only that order of that you just find out, so that easily you can solve it. Okay, so this is question number 29. Okay, all right, hope you have followed. So activity they are asking, initial, so initial number of nucleides, how many for these many mg, how many nucleides are present, right? Next, based on the given statement, choose the correct option. Okay, statement 1. For a disk situated in xy plane, radius of gyration is same for x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. So suppose if you are putting the disk like this, so this is x, this is y, and this will be z anyway, right or not? So definitely along y and z it will be same moment of inertia, but along x-axis it is different, no? X-axis is the it is axis which is perpendicular to the plane and passing through the center, and y and z are lying in the plane of the disk. Whenever it is lying in the plane of the disk, for a disk, its moment of inertia mr square by 4, and whenever it is perpendicular to the plane of the disk and passing through the center, its moment of inertia is mr square by 2, and this radius of gyration is depending on root of moment of inertia by mass. You know this, root of I by m. So when moment of inertia is same, radius of gyration is same. It is, this is not same, this is also not same. So it is not same along x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. So statement 1 wrong. What about statement 2? In case of rigid body motion, there is no change in the shape and mass. Yes, whenever rigid body, however it may move, it may have combined translator and rotational motion, shape is not going to change, mass also is not going to change. So statement 2 is correct, but first statement is wrong. So statement 1 is false and 2 is true. Okay. So this is the remaining questions what we have, right? So we'll stop it here. So these are all the questions. So first shift questions, 25th July, first shift questions. So we'll come to the, in the next session, we'll discuss about the second shift questions also, right? So